Joining me is Richard Wolff. He's an economist and professor emeritus at my alma mater, the University of Massachusetts. Professor Wolff, we're hearing so much instantly the day after President Obama was reelected. The conversation turned to this fiscal cliff that we are told is coming. Let's walk through, first of all, what is meant by fiscal cliff, and is it really a cliff?
Well, it's probably a cliff, but let me leave that to your listener and explain what it is. If you go back about a year, there was a standoff between Obama and the Republicans in the House of Representatives about doing two things: dealing with the deficit and raising the debt limit, allowing the government to borrow more, which it now has to do all the time because the economic crisis we're in has cut revenue to the government, and therefore it's always in the need of borrowing money if it's going to keep up its spending, which it kind of has to do to try to offset the crisis. So they couldn't reach an agreement. They kept trying. And so finally they did what our political gridlock leadership often does. They kicked the proverbial can down the road. They reached an agreement that if they were not able, over the next 12 and a half months or so, that is till around now, till the end of this year, if they were unable to come to some sort of agreement about how to reduce the government's deficit, either by raising taxes or by cutting government spending or some combination of both of them, if they couldn't agree, then they both agreed last year that an automatic set of tax increases and an automatic set of spending cuts would go into effect. And the fiscal cliff refers to what will happen literally on the 31st of December of this year. If the president and the Republicans cannot work out a deal, what will happen is all of these, quote, automatic cuts in spending and increases in taxes will go into effect as of January 1, and that will have a severely negative effect on the economy, hence the term cliff.
Okay, now let's go through it piece by piece. First of all are the tax cuts which would be allowed to expire. Now, presumably these expirations would not be retroactive. In other words, at the end of this year, people will have 4.5 or 3.5 months during which to file their taxes for 2012. However, those rates are set, correct? In other words, the tax increases would apply to the 2013 tax year, which would not even be filed until 2014. Am I close on that?
Yes, but you've got to be careful here. First of all, if your taxes go back up, that is, if they do not continue the tax cuts from the Bush administration, which is part of what this is all about, then your withholding, for example, on your weekly paycheck would go up immediately in January to reflect the fact that you would now be having to pay a higher rate of taxes than you did during 2012. So there would be an immediate impact that way. Also, part of the cliff deal has to do with the cut in the payroll tax that Obama got through this year, so that we're paying all people who have to pay their Social Security portion of their withholding every week or every month when you get paid. That also would go up because it's been reduced this year quite substantially from what it normally is. So you'd have more withheld for the income tax and more withheld for your Social Security if this cliff, going over the cliff, these automatic tax increases go into effect.
From the point of view of what would have the least negative or maybe most positive effect on the economy as a whole, what is your analysis of what type of deal could be struck that would be, given what's possible, the ideal scenario?
Well, that's a kind of difficult question to answer. Both Republicans and Obama and the Democrats agree that the deficit has to be brought down. Let me put aside for a moment whether that's realistic or necessary, but they all agree that that's what has to happen. Their only disagreement is on exactly how to get that done. That is, what combination of tax increases and government spending cuts will accomplish that goal. That said, it is certain, virtually certain, that whatever they agree, or whatever kind of cliff we go over, the impact on our economy will be negative. Why? Because what the government spends, if that's going to be cut, that means there's less government entering the economy, buying goods and services, because that's what it means if the government's expenditures are cut. And that means all kinds of people who thought they would get a check from the government, workers, businesses, will be disappointed. And that disappointment will ramify through the economy. Number two, whoever's taxes get raised, and by ever how much, that will also be negative. Because as the government takes more taxes out of the pockets of people and businesses, that's less they have left to spend, which means it's less stimulus that they're providing by their spending to the economy. So no matter how you look at it, the effect on the economic situation in the United States, which isn't good to begin with, is going to be negative. You have to believe that a deficit is so bad that you're willing to improve the conditions of the deficit, even at the cost of a negative impact on the economy. So that's what they're all agreed to do. Now, to get to the second part of your question, what would be an alternative to what they're about to do? And the answer is either decide that deficit isn't a big problem now. And how does that reasoning work? The following. It is so dangerous in a depressed economy. And let's remember, we're in a depressed economy that has been unable to get out of its doldrums since the autumn of 2007. That's over 5 years now. It is very unwise, a whole raft of people say, to negatively impact the economy at such a time. So they argue, put the deficit question aside. We can return to dealing with the deficit when our economy is once again on a steady upward growth path, which is what we hope for. And the way to do that is to have the government not raise taxes and not cut its spending. If anything, do the opposite. So that the gamble would be, let's stimulate the economy and grow our way out of this crisis, rather than reduce the deficit, but at the cost of giving a negative jolt to an already hobbled economic system. Finally, suppose you take seriously the deficit, that you think it should be cut, but worry about the negative impact on the economy of going over the cliff or any of the kinds of agreements that the Republicans and Democrats are likely to achieve. Then the answer is actually quite simple. You've got to tax the rich. And the reason you tax the rich is the following. Rich people are not going to change their spending habits if you jack up their taxes a little bit. That's what it means to be rich. They have enough, and Lord knows the top 1% to 5% in the United States fully fill this description. They earn so much money. They have gotten a larger share of income over the last 30 years than anything they had before, that taxing them, even significantly, is not going to change the apartments they live in, the cars they drive, the vacations they take, the food they buy, the clothing they wear, or anything else. So you can get the money out of their hands because it's basically sitting doing nothing in their bank accounts, get it out of their hands, give it into the hands of the government, which will spend it in a way that will stimulate the economy, precisely what the rich are not doing, and then you would be able to lower the deficit because the government would be taxing the rich, it wouldn't have to borrow. And here's the final irony. When the government taxes the rich, it's actually making an arrangement to move money out of the hands of the rich that is no different from when the government borrowed to pay for a deficit, since the people the government borrowed from are the same rich that it would otherwise tax. So you can reduce the deficit, the government doesn't have to borrow, by taxing the rich rather than borrowing from them, which is what we've been doing the last 5 years. That's a way to deal with the deficit, to avoid going over the negative impact of the cliff, and tax those most able to pay and who've done the best. And the irony, the sad, tragic irony is that neither the Republicans nor the Democrats dare to discuss, let alone seriously consider that option, not because it isn't the best for our economy, but because the people they would have to tax are the ones that finance both of the parties in all of their elections. And so we're stuck in the situation we now face.
Well, you answered what was going to be my next question, which is, are all tax cuts equally stimulative? So now that we've covered that, we can say we've been speaking with economist and professor emeritus from the University of Massachusetts, Richard Wolff. We will see what happens in the next 6 weeks, and then, of course, we'll check back in with you. Thank you so much.
Very welcome, David.
Okay, we'll take a break. We'll be back with plenty more after this.